I am doing well, Shane. Just did a little bit more prep than usual, and kind of off our usual cadence. Or we've been pumping out episodes really efficiently.
I think I think this one was worth it though. I mean, we had a bit of a link before you even came in here today. I got up this morning and everything's exploded around this whole China ban thing with South Park. You came in to the studio and said, have you watched the episode? I said, no, I was going to do it this morning. I just got, I got real busy and I couldn't do it. And so here we are. We sat down, we watched the 20-minute episode.
Great episode.
It is a great episode. But I think what was funny is, like one of your first remarks about it was, God, is that it? Is that all that China was offended by? Like, this is what it takes to get banned in China.
Yeah, I actually think so. Obviously, we're going to be talking about China and the South Park episode and the NBA and video games and the movie industry that just seems to kowtow to China and how that is having an effect. But as I'm looking through all this, all the tabs I have open to talk about this, I can't help but think if you don't care about principles, which countries don't care about principles because they're non-entities, they're not one single person, and they have agendas, and it just grows by itself. That's the nature of things. If you don't have principles, their strategy is really, really smart. They're setting the bar, right?
Yeah.
They're for a long time they've been growing. They're a bigger powerhouse because they have so many people and they've got a lot of money, and they're setting the bar, and they're like, this is where it starts. Anything you smile while you're walking past our president, you say he looks like a bear,
like Winnie the Pooh.
Yeah. one tweet by somebody who doesn't matter, and that becomes the new normal. That becomes where people's mind, even subconsciously, is like, well, here's what I can do and not do. And that might seem funny to some of us, like what I can do and not do. I can say F China all day long, doesn't matter. But there are tons of people, apparently, people who have more power and influence than you and me, who cater their actions based on this standard that China has set super duper ultra low, which boggles my mind.
And standing with any authoritarian regime. I mean, there's no principle in an authoritarian regime. That's the crux of the whole argument, right? Is like,
there might be some principles every so often,
but they're not our principles.
We don't kill some authoritarian regimes don't kill little children.
Here's the principle in authoritarian regimes is, don't let the authoritarian regime collapse, or else we're screwed.
That is a good point.
That's their principle. And so whatever gives them more longevity in terms of holding on to that authority, that's what they promote as principle.
So that's interesting, because I agree with that, but you could say strategically that then what China's doing is silly, because how about not create a whole controversy? And controversy leads to, and if you really do it if you exercise the moral outrage in the wrong area, there can be a lot of pushback, which there is a lot of pushback. Mm-hmm. So you'd think that a state like that, and that this proves that it's not a person making decisions, that a government entity is in and of itself this non-human evil thing, that it's in control of this.
Yeah, and what a position to take, right? Because, I mean, think about this. Think about if President Xi over there, he just kind of laughs this thing off, right? Like, instead of having these very pompous, executives of state, right? Where Trump doesn't take things, like he doesn't take the poking fun and all that very well. Xi obviously doesn't take. He takes it to a completely different level of retaliatory.
So here's an interesting position. If those two were inverted, Xi and Trump. So Trump was the dictator of China. I know he's not called a dictator, but I'm going to call him that. And Xi is the dictator of America. See what I did there? Do you think that Xi would just have to adapt? That this is, if you're put in that position with so much power, you're adapting to the situation? And would Trump be like, no more small hands on TV or something like that? I don't know.
I definitely think some
or
of the
no more big hands, so my hands don't look smaller.
Yes,
yes, I don't know.
I know. I extremely fair point, but I don't know. I just think that what a missed opportunity for for anybody that has fun poked at them. One of the best things my dad ever taught me to do from a very, very early age was, if somebody's making fun of you, just laugh with them, man. Laugh with them. And here's the other thing is maybe double down on their joke. If you double down on their joke, you're actually showing a more sign of confidence. You're showing humility. Those two things combined will endear you to people versus, ostracize you from a population, right?
Absolutely. At the very least, you ignore like the bully or the person making fun of you, because then they get bored. So, but this actually illustrates. This is almost like an equation of why in my life, everything is equations of why government is bad. But this is an equation. It's like, here are the smart things to do. You either like have confidence and play into it and have fun and kind of disarm your opponent, or you just ignore it. But the government creates this monopoly on power to where they have other options, which are not the smart thing to do. So government is not the smart thing to do.
No,
that's my A plus B equals C.
And I mean, there's a lot of dark humor in this episode, because that's what you have to do to convey these points. Like you have to be able to laugh at some dark humor. And what would have been a better thing for Z and all those guys to do? They could have done something, where they made fun of themselves. They could have taken a new a new line, so to speak, and it said something to the effect of, "Oh, if you think the Winnie the Pooh's bad, you should see our slave camps or something like that." I mean, like,
boy. So I see your point, and I'm glad that they're not that smart, because we can see that politicians and government people are able to endear themselves to people. Trump has endeared himself. He's like, I don't know. To some people, he's
Trump.
This badass, this badass mavericky kind of guy, and then people forget all the bad stuff, all the fact that this is an intrinsically flawed system.
Sure.
So I'm glad that they're not smart and make these mistakes and tell people that Winnie the Pooh is now banned in China.
Yeah. So I don't know. One of the things that struck me about this whole thing, Banks, is I guess I'd never thought about it. It just wasn't on my mind. What you would have to do as an international company to capture a lot of the market, especially the pop culture market in China. I never thought about that. And I was kind of somewhat shocked, I guess, that, Disney has had the success, I guess, that they have in China. I mean, when you look at the Disney franchise, I mean, it's Star Wars. You've got, obviously, Marvel, which, too, they're huge flagships out there. I think, what is it, Pixar or DreamWorks or something like that? I think it might be Pixar as part of that as well. And so, to see how well they've done, the fact that they have, I think, Chinese Disney World over there. And I mean, it is, they've done extremely well, but I didn't realize how much of the other parts of industry kind of led, Trey and the guys over at South Park to make this. Like, there's a real problem.
I mean, there must be so much more than we can even think about, like all the small things in life.
Sure.
Like just how things are shaped. And back in the day, I used to play World of Warcraft, and something that all the players there thought was hilarious, which is actually one of these small things that doesn't matter in the grand scheme of things, is that game in China. So that game has like skeletons and undead kind of characters.
Sure.
But that's not allowed in China.
Why is that?
Per the censors, because it's offensive or I don't know.
No, I mean, it's obvious.
I'm trying to take this subject seriously, but again, I played a game where we all made fun of that because it's ridiculous. But
Sure.
So for this game to exist there, they had to spend a bunch of money. So you got all these people paying for the game who don't want to pay for that to put skin on all the undead, and to put instead of having some bones in a corner, you'd have some like bread. Because that's the first thing they were like, okay, let's just replace all the bones in the game with bread.
And now it doesn't make sense. It's kind of weird.
And so, but those are these small, like there must be a billion examples of these small little things that accumulate to China influencing the world.
Sure.
In this ridiculous
in a numbers game.
In this ridiculous way, and then in this evil way.
Yeah, I mean, and that's the thing is you look at this and you go, oh yeah, there are billions of people there, right? I mean, that's a pretty hard number to even fathom. You can't fathom what America is in 330 million.
Human beings are very bad at
understanding numbers,
understanding those numbers. And I say that in politics sometimes. It's like if you go out in the street and you're like, and there's 100 people that in one day, in whatever 8-hour work day that say, you're the best person, the most awesome person, and you should be president, you're going to feel really pumped up. You're going to be like, I'm the best person. I should be president. In the grand scheme of even an election, which we're not talking about billions, that means nothing.
Zero. I mean,
fathoming
it's a rounding error.
A billion, like I don't even think I'm capable of like understanding what that means.
Yes. Well, here's what you can do though, is you can do simple game playing, right? In terms of throwing some numbers against the board, saying, hey, listen, if we capture 1% of this market at X amount of dollars per widget, we're going to do okay. Like that like
you know that Mark Cuban hates that argument, right?
What's that? Yeah.
On Shark Tank, you'll have these entrepreneurs that come in, and some of them their main argument or their second argument will be, well, the microphone industry is a $6 billion industry. So if I just get 1% or 0.1% of that industry, I'll be making.
He's more utilitarian in his arguments and understanding of things. He's like, all right, well, what? No, that's not a business plan. And so, no, I understand, but I don't think, as
I'm just making up.
As we see with Stan's father in this episode, if you guys haven't watched it, it's hysterical. Warning, spoilers ahead. Not that you can spoil this episode, I don't think, because I think it's
that good.
It's great.
I contend there are 301 episodes now over I think like 20 years.
Yeah.
And I contend that while there are a few episodes I haven't liked, that American children would have a better education if their whole curriculum was just watching 300 South Park episodes.
I don't disagree with you. And in a history lesson on top of it,
because I think there'd be history, there'd be like the real nature of the world. And it's so funny and entertaining that children would learn how to read and speak and do math, just the things where you need to understand the world just to be able to enjoy. How
old were you when you first remember South Park?
I first remember South Park. I was
young,
probably
man. Like a preteen.
Yeah, like a preteen, but I didn't watch it then because that wasn't really like allowed.
Do you remember what they used to say? I mean, I remember when South Park hit the scene, man. And I mean, I was a teenager. I was one of those kids, where adults,
the target audience.
Well, yeah. I mean, but here's the thing: is adults had real problems with it. I mean, to the extent where it was jackasses like Bill O'Reilly, I imagine, if memory serves. These ridiculous old fuds that are just, so out of touch, don't understand. Well, part of the propaganda machines anyway.
Was it the same kind of stuff like with the music? Oh, it's a devil's music.
Yes. I mean, it was the same thing that, like Dee Snider and those guys ran into with Tipper Gore. It was, it was this, oh, South Park is terrible. It's targeted at, young people to change their mind, to make them anti-American, anti-government,
it's pushing drugs. And
here's the thing: is most of the time
degeneracy,
it's just truth wrapped in this really special comedy wrapper that is brilliant.
Even if you don't like the rapper, which every so often there'll be an episode where I'm like, the rapper kind of sucks on this. You're like, the truth part is really good.
Really, really something. And I'll tell you what, this one does not disappoint, which I think is funny, is because it seemed to me that this came out, and I was having trouble because I started seeing things pop up in my news feed earlier in the week before I think the episode even aired out there.
Well, no, because the episode would have aired
Wednesday,
not this Wednesday, the Wednesday before.
Oh, is that right?
So there was like a week there.
Okay,
but it didn't. The outrage didn't happen until a protester in Hong Kong had a projector and projected it onto a building.
Oh, really?
During the protest, and apparently this has become a thing. There's been quite a few movies, a documentary about the protest in 1987 in Korea, and I think The Matrix, which is why I watched The Matrix the other day.
Sure.
And this that have been like, while people are protesting at night, they watch these movies. And that's how it got the attention of China and so forth. Like, whoa, 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 whoa. What's happening here?
Should we play our first clip from this?
It is the best clip. Thank you to Michael Davis for sending it to me.
Yeah.
It made my day.
So the boys have formed this extremely like death metal type band, right?
Well, that's what angsty teens do, man.
Yeah.
Even though they're in fourth grade still for 20 years.
So they've formed this this death metal band, and there's this guy that comes in that wants to produce them, and he's saying, hey, here's your education on how this all works. There's Act 1, Act 2, and Act 3. Blah,
so
blah,
he
blah, blah.
wants to make it like a biopic about the band.
Yeah.
Because it's no longer about the music, it's about the biopic, and that's going to make $100 million.
And he's trying to give these kids an education on their marketing power, not only in the U.S. but now China, and it's full of truth. Here you go.
All right. Well, you know what they say. You gotta lower your ideals of freedom if you want to suck on the warm teat of China.
It is very true.
Yeah, dude. I mean,
And
think
you
about
could
it.
even apply it to so many other parts of life. Like, you have to lower your standards of freedom, basically, and moral integrity if you want to make money in the United States in lots of ways. Like, you can go work for Raytheon, and or you can work for the prison industrial complex, and you can, I don't know, sell cages for cops to put people in. Mm-hmm. Yeah, you can make a bunch of money if you don't have any integrity. I mean, integrity.
Integrity. Let's see what you did there.
Yeah, so Randy Marsh's cannabis farm, and we'll call it cannabis on the show, it's called Tegrity Farms, and it plays so well into the episode,
it does.
talking about how he's like, I'm going to bring integrity to China. It's
Through weed.
so well done. And I don't know if they've got like this overarching plan over years to tie in all the subjects, but Tegrity Farms came out like a year or more ago, like the whole that part of the show.
Sure.
But it ties in so well with this episode about integrity in China. I'm like, man, these guys are geniuses. Like, genius prophets.
I mean, do you think you could do this kind of stuff if this was your job? Sit around all day and really kind of have fun with what's going on out there. I guess a lot of what's done is done in jest. It's written where it really puts a magnifying glass on personas and what's the word I'm looking for? Geez, oh Pete, I hate when I have.
I wish I could follow your train of thought there.
Well,
I'm following your train of thought, but not the specific word you're looking for.
Stereotypes.
Stereotypes.
Thank you. Yeah, stereotypes. Thank
You're
you, Brain.
welcome.
Thank you, Brain. But yeah, they take stereotypes and they put them under a magnifying glass, blow them up, make them as ridiculous as they can, and I don't know. They've just got this formula. I think this would be a ton of fun to do.
I think I could do it. I wouldn't be as good as them at it, but I think I could get better at it.
They got a pretty big team, I think, of people that are in the know doing this, and
they probably do.
They stick to principle here, and that's the one thing that I love about all of this. Right, is these guys have stuck to principle. Their principle is, we don't give a damn what any of you think out there. We're going to continue to do it this way. There's not a ton of businesses out there that are like that, man. And you were pointing out to me earlier that you had found another one.
So it's Fortnite.
Yeah.
So Fortnite is, everybody's heard of Fortnite. Like 14-year-olds are addicted to Fortnite. I walked in today and Jackson was playing Fortnite.
Yeah, I've lifted the ban on Fortnite, and for good reason.
I don't want to be a fearmonger, like Fortnite is bad, but it does seem like, I watched my nephew playing it. It just does seem to be like a ludicrous environment, like the community, and then you play for, like, you start a game, and every time you restart, I used to play video games, so this is interesting to me. You start and you spend like 10-15 minutes just like getting like your weapons and so forth.
Yeah,
and then
equipped.
You spend like 2 minutes dying. It just, whatever. But a lot of people play it. And this has endeared me to them a lot. So I think we mentioned earlier that Activision Blizzard.
Yeah, so Activision is a company out there that obviously owns Fortnite.
No. Activision owns World of Warcraft and Hearthstone and so forth.
They don't own Fortnite.
No.
I misunderstood.
I'll paint the picture here for you. So Activision Blizzard owns Hearthstone and World of Warcraft and that whole Diablo 3.
Okay.
And there's professional games over in Asia for Hearthstone. It's this video game with it's like an electronic version or a virtual version of like Magic the Gathering cards kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
And they had a tournament with a guy named, is it here? Nah, his name is Chung Neng Wei. Blizz Chung is his like screen name or something.
Okay.
And he won this tournament, won like $10,000, and then there was like a streaming of him. So these two like video game newscasters, and they're asking him something, and they kind of laugh for a second, and he puts on goggles and a mask in solidarity with the Hong Kong protests, and they duck under the desk, and he says something like, "Liberate Hong Kong, revolution of our day." That's all he does. And you can already see that these newscasters are kind of fearful because they're like, we're not. They're kind of laughing, but they duck because they don't want to be on screen while he says that. And then he says that, and then it's kind of over. So again, a tiny small thing. This one guy who won a tournament, $10,000, not a ton of money, and Activision, which is a huge American company, okay, like hundreds of millions of dollars, I think, bans him. He's not allowed to play esports anymore. He's a professional gamer. That's what he does. They take his money because they can do that per the contracts. And they issue statements, one of which is, "We will always stand for the pride of our country." So this is in Mandarin on their Chinese Twitter as an American company. And in that world, I've watched a lot of YouTube videos. This is like blown up. You've had some Blizzard and Activision employees walking out. You've had a whole movement to like boycott them. And it's really, you see two things. You see some who are just used to this. It's kind of internet culture thing. They're like, oh, this is a bad thing. And I'm glad they've pointed that direction. And some they're like, how the hell does this happen? Like, this is a nothing story. Like, why would you like ruin our game and so forth over this? And small issue. And as we've been talking, most companies are kowtowing to China, but Fortnite, the CEO, his name is Tim Sweeney, came out and said that they would never do that. And then he got pushback on that. Let me find the thing here. Some Russian somebody, it looks like, said, are you saying that if somebody was playing Fortnite, because that's a professional game as well,
sure,
like the guy who won the world tournament, he's 16 years old, won $3 million. The government took half of it.
Attaboy.
But whatever. So this person said, if somebody said free Hong Kong in an interview after a game, you wouldn't do anything? He said, exactly. And then he doubled down on his bad-ass, and this person said, I thought your company had a majority investor from the Chinese, that is Chinese. Surely it would end up in a similar situation as investors pull out big chunk of cash flow. It's not the right decision to make, but I'm sure it puts any company on the edge. Tim Sweeney said, Epic is a U.S. company, and I'm the controlling shareholder. Tencent, which is the Chinese company, is an approximately 40% shareholder, and there are many other shareholders, including employees and investors. The next person said, 40% is a big chunk, though. They're already apparently pulling out of the NBA league. Can you honestly say if a similar event happened, you wouldn't have to sever ties with said influential figure, the NBA coach, Hearthstone champ? So we're talking about the Hearthstone thing is the whatever his name was, and the NBA, which we'll talk about in a second. And he said, yes, absolutely. That will never happen. I'm the founder, CEO, and majority controlling shareholder.
Really
Which
cool.
I think it's just a badass thing to say, that this company owns 40% of his company.
Yeah.
But the major difference is that it's not a public company. It's a private company. Mm-hmm. And so all these government entities who try to control about, oh, you control the company and you've made some decisions that might harm some people. Well, that's not allowed because you're a public company. So it's really cool that he came out and said something. And you could say, oh, this person is saying something so he can gain, like, make more money. But then he, like, doubled down multiple times. And that kind of shows some real integrity there.
And some integrity. Yeah. That's resolve, man. I mean, that's principled resolve. I love it, man.
For a big company who has a lot, like, ties to China. Like, Fortnite is big in China, too.
Oh,
it's big everywhere.
Big.
Yeah.
And I think that is a beautiful illustration of the market. I think, you know, when you have the principle to sit there and say, no, listen, they're 40% of my company. And I'm going to continue to stay principled. I'm going to continue to do what we're doing. And we are going to, you know, support Hong Kong. We are going to support free speech. We're going to support, you know, freedom of expression in general. Mm-hmm. And, you know, here's the thing is, you don't want to be part of this? Cool, is what he's saying to those guys. You don't have to be part of my company. But guess what? That 40% share that you have of my company and the profits that you take from our company, that's going to disappear too. Don't forget, I mean, the U.S., I know we don't have the numbers, but I'll tell you right now, the expendable income in the U.S. has got to be something that even China, you know, obviously wants to be a part of. You know, if we can just
I think China,
we can just get 1% of that 330 million.
I think China has made and makes most of their money from us.
Sure they do.
They're a large population. They're getting richer, so that might change. But in the grand scheme of things, I think it is at first, I was just really annoyed, and I wanted to come on the show and just ask you a question. I've got another question later, but I was going to ask you, like, does this not freaking depressing, Shane? And I'm driving up here, and then I learned about the Fortnite thing because I'm listening to some podcast, and I'm like, oh, well, it's all about how you view the world. And if you view the world of every time a company, whether it's Apple or the NBA or Activision or what's a company that's let me down often? I can't. Apple. Really, Apple.
Apple
a lot. Yeah.
Yeah.
That does something stupid. The worse their actions are, the more opportunity it is for good things to have a spotlight.
Yeah.
So I don't care about Fortnite. I almost like don't like it that much, and I think my nephew, the way he loves it is like just insane. But this puts a spotlight on something good, and I really appreciate that.
Yeah. My kids will continue to play for that reason, you know. And that's, you know, if this is one thing I can do to support this guy, all right, you can have a few minutes of my kids' time, and, you know, maybe we'll throw you a few bucks here and there on you know, for stuff within Fortnite. God almighty, it's the weirdest thing in the world. But, you know, hey, kids are making $16 million or what, $33 million off it at 16 years old. You know, to sit there and tell kids that there's no path to this, you know, in terms of supporting yourself in the future. What a ridiculous claim. I think an entire generation missed it, but that's a different show altogether.
We've gone so far in that. It's like tons of people make a living.
You can make a living from doing near anything if you can chronicle it.
Yeah, that goes back to that episode on Gary V's book.
That's damn right. I actually was just talking about that yesterday, and I have some plans, Banks, that I can't wait to talk to you about here.
Cool. Do you want to talk about the NBA now?
I do want to talk about part of that. Let me.
We could do the intro with Trevor Noah.
Yeah, let's do the Trevor Noah piece right now. So Trevor Noah, you guys know him from The Daily Show. He's the guy that took Jon Stewart's place over there. Probably not quite as good, but he makes some
not as good. Sorry, that was just way too funny.
He makes some fair points here, and I took this montage because I didn't realize what the problem was here with American-based companies in the first place, which led South Park to do this. But this kind of this will paint the picture very well.
In the bin. So China is basically going to war with the NBA, all because of a single tweet. And as surprising as that may seem to some people, the truth is this kind of thing has been happening between China and American companies a lot.
The NBA not the only one feeling the heat either. U.S. jeweler Tiffany also under fire after tweeting an image of a Chinese model covering one eye, with people believing it was done in solidarity with those Hong Kong protests.
Nike bowing to pressure from Beijing, pulling a sneaker from the Chinese market.
Activision has suspended a professional video game player and taken away his prize money.
Apple took the Taiwan emoji off its keyboard if you are in Hong Kong or Macau.
Marriott apologized to the Chinese government.
Versace, Givenchy, and Coach issued apologies.
Mercedes-Benz is offering an apology.
The Gap issued a sincere apology.
Delta saying we apologize deeply for the mistake.
Damn, China gets offended by a lot of shit.
He's not wrong.
Again, I think if you're just an evil dictator, authoritarian entity, it's very smart to set the bar that freaking low. Do you know what the tweet was from for the NBA?
Please do share.
It is from Daryl Morey. He is the general manager for the Houston Rockets. So he's not even like one of the players or one of the owners. Apparently he's one of the highest profile executives within the NBA, but still not a name that I recognize. Okay, I don't follow sports, so that's a bad comparison. But it is one picture that says "Fight for Freedom, Stand with Hong Kong" with a logo, the Hong Kong logo. That's it. That's it. On October 4th, he tweeted that at 7:49 p.m.
That's crazy. That's
how this is what you usually do. Like, we probably do it more than other people, like tweet about liberty and freedom, but it's kind of like America.
Yeah. I mean, seriously, guys, we don't, the fact that we have American-based companies that want American money from American consumers that are willing to bow down and grovel at the foot of the Chinese government, who is awful. And don't get me wrong, man. I know we've got problems. I know we do some really, really terrible things around the world. But like, for American capitalist to do this kind of crap, I don't know. It is one of those things where I am so happy to see a South Park episode that stands up to this and addresses it. South Park did apologize for this, right?
Oh, such a good apology too. Lengthy, in-depth, empathetic.
I will read that right after we listen to one other scene, I think, from... Oh, did I mess it up? No, I didn't. I got it. So there's one other scene. And so I need to kind of set this scene up. So as Stan's dad gets on the plane in the first place, he's sitting next to somebody who is clearly to represent Apple, right? Because he's sitting there, he's just holding his Apple phone up in the first row so you can see it. Stan's dad is like, I have this idea, let me tell you about it. And he's like, yeah, I've been there a bunch of times. Obviously, Apple's in China, right?
Sure.
And then I didn't catch who the two guys were. Hey, you're on this flight too? When they jump in?
It was Disney and something.
It was something else, but you had like Thor sit down next to Stan's dad, along with a ton of other Disney characters who are all getting on this plane to go to China. And so he goes over there. He gets thrown into a gulag, obviously for bringing a suitcase full of weed, some integrity weed over, to make sure that they understand what he's all about. And I guess this in the episode, it really pisses China off. And so now we enter a room with tons of Disney characters. I mean, we're talking about all of Marvel, all of the Pirates of the Caribbean, the Captain Hook, all the
Star Wars,
all the throwback characters, Star Wars, and then
Isn't it sad that Star Wars gets lumped into there just because Disney owns them now?
Yeah, and then one pissed off Mickey Mouse comes in looking for the person who pissed off China. This is one of the most hysterical scenes I think I've seen, and it buries.
This is not the first time they've used that Mickey Mouse character. Like, it's a fake Mickey Mouse, who looks angry. He's appeared in a few South Park episodes.
It absolutely buries Disney and China all in one fell swoop, and I love it. Here comes Mickey and the volume with Mickey. Let's play it again. Ready?
Who's the asshole? Which one of you decided to go and start bad-mouthing the Chinese government? Who here thought they had permission to say anything critical of Chinese politics.
Well, it is true, sir. The Chinese seem to exploit their own people with forced labor.
Shut the fuck up, Thor! You're here to flex and not think, you fucking bitch!
Please, Mr. Marsh was only standing up for me and Piglet because we were political prisoners.
You are a fat diabetic bear, and if the Chinese don't want you, then I don't either. Now who the fuck is Mr. Marsh?
Oh, that's me, Randy Marsh.
Who is this? I don't know you. Are you from Pixar?
No, I'm from South Park.
What's South Park? Do I own that?
No, not yet, sir.
You're telling me that I'm losing Chinese customers because of some shithead that's not even from my company!
Hey, hold on a minute. You really think that business should be run through intimidation and fear? Whatever happened to old-time values? You already have business with the Chinese. You have all the connections money can buy. But there's one thing you don't have, and that's integrity. Now, it just so happens.
That's kind of the end of that scene, but
such a good scene.
Oh man, to see Disney depicted so well. You know, I think you would have Walt rolling over in his grave right now for what Disney has done to sell themselves out to the statist regime of China. To see it all just wrapped up in this fervor of a mouse who's lost his damn mind in his way, and to see it play out with, you know, the characters that they, you know, a lot of us have come to love out there. Mm-hmm. It is one of the most fantastic scenes that I've seen in South Park.
Speaking of the love for characters, how do you keep that mindset about I love, I don't know, the Star Wars stuff, but I hate the company that owns it?
I'll tell you right now.
Does that bother you?
I'm bothered by Star Wars in general now. So it's
okay. Bad example.
But no, you know, obviously I don't agree with what they did. Like the thing is they're bowing here in America too. You know, they are absolutely, you know, on bended knee right now to try to be extra inclusive and to try, you know, the empowerment thing, which I think is completely missed and overdone, because there are, you know, like Disney nails some things. Was Brave is an animated film. I don't know if it's Pixar or if it's,
I think it's Disney.
I think it, yeah, no, it definitely is Disney. They nail it because they're not trying to make somebody special. You know, like her character is what makes her special. It's not, you know, the fact that she's a female. It's not the fact that she's black or white or redheaded. Like, none of that stuff matters. It's what her character is that matters. And I'm trying to think of the other example where I've seen this recently, and I thought, wow, you know, they nailed this, and then they missed it so badly. Like, they missed it with Captain Marvel, right? The character has this, you know, this availability to be something pretty special. But then they put in Brie Larson, right? Brie Larson's just a bad actress. She is all like girl power and apologetic for being white, and, you know, like it's...
Oh, where I think they missed it, and you might agree here, is that movie I saw with you guys, you and your family, the Panther one.
Oh, Black Panther.
Yeah, Black Panther. If they hadn't overdone it and tried to like shove it all in your face, the story of like a people protect themselves is like a great story, but then they had to overdo it.
Well, yeah, with the whole colonizer thing, right?
Yeah.
Because nobody who's ever had black skin has ever taken over something by force. Give me a break. It's ridiculous. I mean, that's how a lot of slaves got to America in the first place. It's because tribes in Africa went and invaded other tribes and took hostages and then sold them. Like, yeah. So they miss it. They miss the point in that kind of thing.
But
so
they can't. But there's so much truth in the world, because the world is based on truth, even if we ignore it, that they can't help but have some truth in there, and then they always mess it up.
Yeah.
Or almost always.
Almost always. You're not wrong, but I want to get to the apology real quick before.
Oh, yes.
Before we kind of switch subjects, and I've got a couple other things based on this. This is from the guys over at South Park to the Chinese government.
It's the official.
It's the official apology to China from Trey Parker and Matt Stone. Quote: "Like the NBA, we welcome the Chinese censors into our homes and into our hearts. We too love money more than freedom and democracy. Z doesn't look just like Winnie the Pooh at all. Tune in to the 300th episode this Wednesday at 10. Long live great Communist Party of China. May the autumn sorghum harvest be bountiful." We good now, China? It's great. Matt and
the only thing I would change
Trey,
is their use of the word democracy.
Yeah.
Which that's the whole pendulum swing of freedom. Is we go in the right direction, but we make some mistakes there. So, for example, we have a revolution and we sign a stupid constitution, and we should have just stayed with the Articles of Confederation.
Yeah, or loosey-goosey or nothing.
Or less. And so I think that when the pendulum swings back, because it's swinging in different directions on different different subjects, right? So you've got more cannabis freedom in America, obviously, because South Park can make a joke about Randy Marsh getting arrested in a Chinese airport, and him being like, what? It's just some cannabis. It's some Taggart weed. But I think that when the pendulum starts swinging back, when you're talking about authoritarian governments, we're going to see some tyranny of the majority, which is happening here in the States.
Oh, sure.
a lot already. And that's going to be another whole education process to go through and be like, we told you so. You can't just go from tyranny to democracy and not expect, if you know things, to not go back to tyranny, because it's based on tyranny. So,
like all government.
Yeah.
Speaking of all government and being fair as well and fun, I decided to look up some things. We kind of talked about what's been banned, like Winnie the Pooh and things like that in China.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, the Americans they're different in what they like to ban and what there are laws in. So I looked up a little list of things that are banned in America.
I thought this was America, to quote Randy Marsh. I thought that's an older episode. I thought we had freedom.
We don't ban things here in America.
Banned.
So this is 50 things you won't believe are banned in America. This is from Reader's Digest. I don't even know when this was published, but it's
that list always starts with you're not allowed to have an ice cream cone in your back pocket in some town in Alabama or something.
Well, it definitely starts with Alabama. In Alabama, do you know what's against the law? There's no bear wrestling in Alabama. So if you want to wrestle a bear, forget it, man. You can get arrested. Explain why that's really weird.
Because most people wouldn't want to wrestle bears in the first place, because I thought this was America and you're not allowed to ban things.
Yeah, it is unlawful to promote or otherwise be involved with bear wrestling matches. That includes selling tickets to bear wrestling matches and or training a bear to be a bear wrestler. Funny that in Alabama's lawmakers thought it important to get this law in the books, when here we were thinking that when we see a bear, all we want to do is run the other direction. Here's 50 of the dumbest laws you'll find around the country. We won't go through all 50 because I'm sure it's a very exhaustive list, but let's go through a few. You can't carry a bow and arrow in part of Alaska. You can't hunt camels in parts of Arizona. There is no honking your horn outside of sandwich shops in Arkansas. In California, well, geez, I'm sure the list is a little bit longer than this, but you can't wear a mask or other disguise in public.
What?
Yeah. So you should rethink your Halloween costume, is what it says.
Nancy Pelosi's in trouble, man. She's wearing a full mask there to hide the lizard behind it.
Yeah, I was going to say hers is internal. In Colorado, there's no throwing missiles at cars. Yeah, I didn't know that was a thing. Connecticut, kissing on Sundays. I guess you can't do that. I'm going to read this one. If you live in Connecticut, you might want to avoid Sunday night dates with your spouse. It's illegal for a man to kiss his wife on Sundays. The origin of this law is unknown, but it exists. Though not really enforced, we promise this is true, but these are 24 U.S. facts. Everybody gets wrong. Anyway.
Though not very enforced. I hope it doesn't get enforced at all.
Do you see how law enforcement selectively enforces really dumb things? Delaware, you can't trick or treat on a Sunday. That's weird. Florida, no internet cafes. Georgia, you can't buy sex toys. Of course, Georgia. Of course. You can't buy sex toys.
So this is an obvious, I'm sure you can.
It's illegal to buy sex toys in Sandy Springs, Georgia.
Oh, Sandy Springs.
Ordinance on the books specifically provides that any device designed or marketed as useful primarily for stimulation of the human genital organs is obscene material and therefore is prohibited.
I'm not sure they're aware of just how many things people use to do that. So... I might have to go down there and use the hammer band and be like, no, this grocery store must be closed. They're selling sex toys.
Anyway, that's where this one's going to have to end, and
Am I going too far?
I'm sure they're going to have to start banning hands at some point here in Sandy Springs.
So I actually think that the Sandy Springs one was a way to close a sex shop.
Yeah.
It's ridiculous. There's also a ban in Massachusetts on singing the song "Short People" by Randy Newman, which is an awesome song.
Short People, huh?
Yeah.
I've never heard it.
It's
you want to hum a few bars for us?
Short people have no reason. Short people have no reason to live. And then it goes on and tells people why they have no reason to live. It's funny. I know it can seem mean,
but it's banned.
But it's banned. You can't sing that.
Wow. Yeah, so we've got some things to straighten out here in America as well. I mean, we're not perfect. Obviously, our external policy is almost as terrible. Well, probably more terrible than China's internal policy, domestic policy. Is that a question, Ron Burgundy? Boy,
it sounds like a question, but you made me think of something talking about the selective enforcement of laws.
Yeah,
you should find probably lower level fantasy crime.
Oh, cannabis.
I'm talking about something that can you should jaywalk in Massachusetts while singing "Short People," and when the cop stops you, be like, "Which crime are you arresting me for, officer?" And he's like jaywalking, like, "What? Did you not hear my eloquent whatever singing?"
Yeah. And I love those memes out there that obviously show where, all these really hard ass, law enforcement guys are out there doing drug bust and stuff like that, where they've got, the displays of money and crap out in front of them. It could be like a dime bag and a couple, legal guns and things like that. And then they juxtapose that against a picture of those idiots back in the 20s who were, the prohibitionists that were dumping out barrels and barrels of alcohol out there. Like, you guys are going to look real stupid in history. You don't enforce all the laws that are on the books now. So there's to even think that you need to do this type of thing at the local level within your communities where you're destroying people's lives. It obviously kind of crazy, but
speaking of history, I wonder if one day, in the same way that we will admonish companies that worked with the Nazis, if we'll admonish companies who are just working with the Chinese government and kowtowing and so forth.
I was thinking that earlier too, Banks. I hope the market responds. I hope. I could see it doing this. I could see the market responding. All these people that got upset about Nike and Colin Kaepernick and taking knees and that kind of stuff. You know how much more big a deal this is than that. Like, this is no kidding. This is a bigger deal. If you've got American companies that are bowing down, man, I hope the market reacts. I don't want legislation. I don't want the government coming in. I don't want government trying to fix this at all. I want the market to fix this. And I don't know. There's something about some faith I have in the American consumers out there still that will sit there probably as a country more jointly, than our terrible little political, silly pissing tribes that we have, and go out there and say, hey, yeah, you know what? Listen, we're not down with any of this crap that China's doing to Hong Kong, and we're definitely not down with you guys banning, what we're doing for your markets. Oh well, I guess we're gonna have to miss out on that Chinese connection, and I don't know.
No, I agree with you. It's funny how we have such a good influence outwardly, but then inwardly, and I'm a hypocrite. You're a hypocrite. I'm using Apple products. I use Amazon. I use Google, and yet they do tons of things that I like. Not just the fact that they don't make good computers anymore, like their policies that affect, or that at least express themselves on what they think is good and bad based on morality, right?
Sure.
Like spying on people, giving the government access or not.
Scores.
So
yeah,
how does that work? It's so easy for us to be like, oh, they're like 7,000 miles away, I guess is Hong Kong, maybe about ish. That's happening. That's bad. And then here, I love having my Amazon Prime bring me stuff the next day.
Dang right.
Even though I think they do tons of bad things and are in direct business with the government, like they sell them their web services and all this kind of stuff, and uphold a government that does horrible things.
Well, listen up, entrepreneurs and people out there that want to do something amazing. Be that company that comes out and says, hey, we're like Amazon, only we're into freedom. That'd be a really neat thing, man. I mean, if South Park can do it, why can't other people? Why can't somebody else come out? And I'll tell you what I'm very excited about. I'm really excited about Jordan Peterson's launch of his whatever it's going to be, his social media or I don't even know what he's going to call it.
It's going to be some kind of payment platform.
What's it? Something thought free? Is it? Man, I cannot remember Jordan Peterson's.
I think I've heard a few names, so I don't know if there's one anchored.
Picked out. But yeah, I'm excited for things like that. I'm excited for this counterculture to catch up in the world of, the internet and social media.
The only thing I'd say against that is I don't see it as a counterculture. The vast majority of people agree on the vast majority of things. When we're talking just about the basic freedoms, I think we're the culture. We're just a very cowardly, scared, and pathetic culture right now. We just need to speak up. As a collective entity. I'm not that good with the collective stuff, so I might get the phraseology wrong.
Yeah.
We need to speak up.
You know who I gained I don't know. Boy, this I have to phrase this the right way. I was captured this week by a couple of tweets and a couple of statements from President Trump. Moving on. We had President Trump come out and send out a couple of tweets. Some people, especially in our circles, call these the best tweets Donald Trump has ever tweeted.
So I know the ones you're speaking of. I still think the one where he says that it wasn't worth the cost of 150 lives in Iran is my favorite.
So obviously,
not bad tweets. I have commentary after you read them.
Yeah, this week Donald Trump came out. This was, I guess this is last week for you guys. If you guys are hearing this on Monday, October 9th, Donald Trump says the United States has spent $8 trillion, all capitalized, fighting and policing in the Middle East. Thousands of our great soldiers have died or been badly wounded. Millions of people, I want to say that again, millions of people have died on the other side. Going into the Middle East is the worst decision ever made in the history of our country. We went to war under a false and now disproven premise. Weapons of mass destruction. There were none. Now we are slowly and carefully bringing our great soldiers and military home. Our focus is on the big picture. The USA is greater than ever before.
So
there's a lot to unpack here, man.
Great statement. One that I don't think a lot of people have pinpointed is the fact that he talks about millions of people dead when usually politicians and commentators talk about a very smaller number, because what you do when you say millions is you're acknowledging
genocide.
Basically, the United States being culpable in millions of Iraqi civilians dying, millions of, well, less in Afghanistan and so forth than Iraq. And that is not something that you would normally see the president acknowledge. He's putting a lot of distance. It's not directly, but it is very different than what you usually see. Because you'll talk about tens of thousands of Americans dying, and every so often I've heard hundreds of thousands, but it's very rare.
No, yeah. The fact that he absolutely comes out and says millions have died, I'm going to give him credit on the millions of people have died. That's a huge statement. And what he's doing is he's distancing himself from this right now. I don't know why. I don't know if it's 4D chess. I think there are some weird things happening right now that, I don't know, I hope are culminating.
I think one of the reasons, and this is not an original Banks, I forgot, I was watching some MSNBC something, and the person on there said something that made me think of this. But one of the reasons is that they were talking about all the impeachment stuff, right? Mm-hmm. And how it looks like this time he might actually get impeached in the House of Representatives, at least, because that's just a political
still hasn't happened
power. But if this is kind of a coup of sorts, right? However many entities in the government are kind of behind this, pushing this, the CIA, obviously.
CIA, NSA, FBI.
This would be a way to deter those same people who are attacking him in this way to lose their focus. Because every time Trump before has said, well, let's calm down on the wars or something, even though he hasn't followed through, which is my second point after this, you've gotten the warmongers within the government, you've gotten the neocons, and then you've gotten people on the left who just like used to be, at least in appearance, anti-war, going crazy. So if you got all these people focused on trying to impeach you and trying to make this a big deal and trying to construct the narrative, which Trump has fought back against quite well, releasing the transcripts and so forth, it would be good to distract them with this and have all their energy be split in two.
I agree.
Half on being like, whoa, we have to stay in war, you crazy person, and half on the impeachment stuff.
Yeah, and I think if this is no kidding strategy and not just good principle, right? And I don't think there's anything that's done without weighing the political consequences and everything else, especially at that level. There's not. I think you're spot on with your assessment, and I think that this is one of those huge things that he has the power to do in terms of, hey, listen, this is over. As a commander-in-chief, to say, my guys as commander-in-chief, they're coming home. You want to talk about taking a big dump in their Cheerios, man, to sit there and have impeachment on the table, for them now to come over here and say, we're leaving. Well, we're at least moving our troops out of northern Syria. This is a 5-alarm fire for these people. Mm-hmm. There is so much planning that has gone into the Middle East over the past 20 years now, and then probably further back than that. Really, if we get into it, depending on who plans were inherited from in the first place, we could go back to the 1940s. Sometime. Sure. Maybe even early 1900s if we want to play that game. But I digress.
You could probably go back to the time before Christ, and how the Middle East has a historical context of whose land it is, and who God chose.
It illustrates very well how big this play is. This play is huge. For him to sit there and say, hey, listen, we're moving. This is the biggest mistake. I'm distancing myself. We have killed millions of people. I don't like the fact that he says we've killed millions of people on the other side.
I completely agree.
I don't think that the peaceful, innocent men, women, and children who have been affected by this war were on the other side. And
I couldn't agree more. I thought that when you're saying it and didn't comment on it. But,
I just have absolutely. I have to at least say that, because I mean,
no, you're right. We've got to take charge of the narrative. The narrative is the vast majority of people agree on the vast majority of things. We're all on the freaking same side, and there's just a very few violent,
terrible people.
I agree.
Yeah. and they somehow rise to power because they will do things that other people won't do, and in subsequent form, people fear that as well. So, you know, I love that he calls out that we went to war under false and now disproven on a disproven premise of weapons of mass destruction. This sets up something totally separate from, you know, what he's just kind of laying out as, hey, we're going to take this action, we're going to move some troops. This sets up people like George Bush and Colin Powell and Condoleezza Rice and who was the sec def at the time. Help me out here.
I'm trying.
Boy,
white hair.
I can see it. Rumsfeld, Donald Rumsfeld, Dick Cheney, and the rest of these cretins. This sets up something very interesting to me.
What's that?
He is saying that they went to war under a false pretense, using the military to invade land that is not U.S. under false premise.
Ooh, I know where you're going now.
What is that?
It's treason.
It is treason. And I can't think of anything more despicable and disgusting and arrogant and absolutely void of any compassion for people. Innocent, good women and children.
And men.
And did I say women and children and men? This sets up something on a T. And I think it is incredibly interesting that he chose the words that he did, and then he capitalizes on this in terms of capitalization, weapons of mass destruction. He's yelling this in a tweet.
To be fair, he does that a lot.
Yeah, but the implication is much bigger, is all I'm saying.
Agreed. I've got one quick question.
Sure.
Constitutionally, if you commit most laws, you need intent, right?
Sure.
Do you need intent to be convicted of treason?
So,
like, I'm thinking of Donald Rumsfeld, who we talked about in an episode, I don't know, 30 or 40 episodes ago, and we talked about how he pushed it, and he gave that speech on the UN floor about it and so forth, and then he had some quotes that are only a few years ago where he said that he regretted it and so forth, and didn't realize that it was false information that the CIA had given them. And so I wonder, can you be convicted of treason if at the time you thought that you weren't committing treason?
I don't think you have to have premeditation, right?
So I'm not talking about premeditation. I'm talking about
intent.
Exact intent. So most laws, and we talked about this, where there's a lot of federal laws now, we don't have to have intent.
I don't think you have to. I mean,
there's a Latin term from it.
Yeah.
For it about how
mens res or whatever it is, and
mens res is, I think, something else. It might be that, I don't know. But where if you didn't do it on purpose, then you're not guilty.
Mea culpa. Yeah. So at any rate, I don't think you do. I don't see.
I could understand at a certain level of responsibility that it's different.
I don't.
Maybe.
Yeah, I don't see. You know, I don't know of any place in the Constitution which talks of this. You know, I guess you could go back and we can make the case and go down this rabbit hole of, hey, listen, you know, it was obviously undeclared in the first place, and so, you know, at that point, using the military outside the constitutional means,
agreed,
you're already, you know, out of line with your oath, which is still, you know, unconstitutional. So let's say that. I mean, the legal term for aiding and abetting refers to a person's action to help, support, or approve of someone else's illegal act.
So I'm not saying that, I'm not trying to uphold Donald Rumsfeld's virtue or anything. This could all be a sham, but I imagine that would apply to some people. Some people it wouldn't. I don't think Dick Cheney. I think Dick Cheney knew better and was probably. I mean, it's pretty overtly apparent that he was a cheerleader in crafting the narrative and so forth.
Cheerleader.
So
I'll tell you right now, have you, like, I'm not going to quote the movie, is it Vice?
Vice. It's a really good movie.
Really great movie. Go and watch it. But I'll tell you right now, I don't want to say cheerleading, more like orchestrator, right?
Agreed.
Because he gets the definition from the Sec Def, basically, where they can employ the military through the executive anywhere, anyhow they really want to do anything, and chase, you know, terrorism, basically, completely different thing. But yeah, I do. I think this is treasonous. I think any time that you go to war without a declaration of war, first and foremost, is treason.
Yeah, that I agree. Which would be more interesting to have Trump attack them on that, and then once that happens, and be like, well, Trump, unfortunately, you fall under the same premise, buddy.
I would love nothing more than to see Bush and Obama and everybody within those camps who did aid and abet in that theater or any other theater across the Middle East or any part of the world where we've had troops. I'd love to see them all tried for war crimes, and I would love to see them put in prison. Obviously, I've stated before, I'm not pro-death penalty at all. They need to sit there and they need to think about what they've done and maybe...
So just on that one premise about going to war unconstitutionally, knowingly, which every president since World War II.
Sure, every one of them.
Just on one thing. It's like one treasonous act. It's very simple to prove.
This is
alone.
This is not a stretch.
That's a weird thing, man.
It's not a stretch, and the fact that Donald Trump is calling this out, I think it is. I don't know, man. This whole thing looks like he's teeing something up, and I will not go down the 4D chess route. I won't. But I do see things that are extremely intentional here, and the only thing that I can pick apart on this is just the other side comment. Other than that, I don't have a problem with this. Now,
I don't have a problem with it either, except the other side thing. And I think it's good to hear either way. Like if I were to pick, even if I knew that this was completely strategic 4D chess or manipulative, I still would want it out there because it's a good message from somebody who has a lot of eyes. It has split the liberty movement kind of in half.
Oh, because of Sarwark.
Well, and I wasn't even thinking of Sarwark.
Have you seen his tweets about this?
Apparently not.
God almighty.
What did he do now?
You're going to have to talk for a minute so that I can look up the Sarwark tweets.
I can talk. I'll explain what I mean about the liberty movement being split in half. I was talking about less CIA people. I've just seen some of the liberty movement. You got the Thomas Massie's and the Rand Pauls saying, "Hey, this is a great thing." The same thing we've been talking about, and it's kind of understandable in their position to influence Trump and to support him to make Trump feel confident in that direction. Great, but I've also seen the other side. This is people with less clout and power maybe than a senator and representative. You've got Dave Smith and part of the problem, and a bunch of other people saying, "Hey, like I don't believe him anymore." He keeps on saying this through the campaign. He was quite anti-war. He keeps on saying he's going to pull out troops. I think he himself, like Trump has said, I wanted to pull out of Syria, but then I had to negotiate, so I just left some in there because the generals didn't want me to pull out completely, so I left 200 troops. Mm-hmm. I see both sides. Like I think it's good to have it out there either way, even if it's a complete lie, because a lot of people don't think it's a lie. He's got 60+ million people who follow him on Twitter, but I'm having a very hard time believing something's actually going to happen. Like he keeps on saying it, man.
I agree, man. I actually thought about doing the meme where his head is on Lucy's body and Charlie Brown are the American people out there.
That's good.
And he keeps and you could do it over.
The football is like no more war. Or
yeah,
something.
You could. We're pulling the troops out. One way or another. You could cite the dates where he's criticized. Being there, pulling out, and over and over and over again. If actions were tweets, I'd be real excited right now.
Oh, that would be a cool thing.
I really
have some cameras follow everybody around, and when they do things,
tweet it.
It tweets it automatically.
Sounds really 1984. But yeah. So I haven't found the exact the exact meme out there where Sarwark is talking about this, but it started off, I guess, at some point where he said, this leaving the Kurds to fend for themselves is probably the most American thing you can do as president, or most American.
He said that?
Yeah.
Okay.
And so I thought it was in bad taste to begin with.
So now I understand. I actually saw something on Facebook earlier today. Sorry to interrupt you. Where he liked a tweet from our friend One-Eyed Tyrant, Dan Crenshaw.
Yeah. Yes. Even that.
And he liked Dan's tweet, and Dan's tweet was just a basic neocon talking point of, we have to stay there to protect freedom because without us there, it's just like, it's not possible. I'm badly paraphrasing, but it was that stupid.
I may have just stumbled onto it here, man. Give me a second.
Yeah, sure. After we talk about that, I'll talk just to fill time. So interrupt me whenever. After that, I would like to play a video from Tulsi Gabbard. She had some comments about Trump, and of course, she's running for president, and she's gone a little bit into playing politics too much, in my opinion, which will not help her. But she had comments about Syria and kind of echoed Trump keeps on saying stuff, but he's not actually doing it kind of thing.
Yeah.
You find it?
No, I haven't found it. If I find it later in this, but the fact that I wish I could remember him verbatim, and I don't want to misquote him, but understand Nick Sarwark has come out as
pro-war.
Not only pro-war, but like in line with the GOP status. Like, I'm talking like Lindsey damn Graham on this kind of stuff.
So guilt by association, like, I'm sure you can find some time where I was in line with Lindsey Graham. But I think you can totally say, like, Lindsey Graham did that whole speech talking about the Kavanaugh situation, and there was some truth to it, even though we both saw through the veil of political theater. But I do think it's very easy to say, hey, you're spouting a neocon, like, basic talking point about why we have to be at war. That is not anti-war, and that is one of the cruxes of libertarianism. It's like as Dave
just
Smith,
war
as Dave Smith says, like, end the Fed and stop the wars. Like, that's all we have to agree on.
Yeah,
like, that's not a lot of stuff.
I mean, and that's the thing is, you know, let's see. He says war is horrible, and our president should be getting American troops out of the many undeclared ones overseas, not starting a civil one at home. Civil war would be a horror, but that horror would be compounded by allowing the government to disarm citizens ahead of hostilities.
This just sounds about something else.
This is something different, man. Let's see. Gun confiscation would be democratically elected. Man, yeah, I'm not finding it. I'm sorry that I missed it here, but I'll tell you right now, like, the more that I learn about this guy, Nick Sarwark, man, the more I hope that the Libertarian Party takes care of business here in January and finds himself a respectable chair. At least it's in line with non-aggression and property rights.
You know, the
peace,
basic thing. Literally,
liberty, free markets.
When you join the Libertarian Party, you there's an oath. And the only part of the thing is that you have to be in line with the NAP and not advocate for violence as a mean of political ends. I'm pretty sure advocating for war in another country is violent and violates the NAP.
Yeah. So his tweet on the Kurds, betraying the Kurds may be the most traditional presidential thing the president has ever done. That's just snarky. Like, it's one of those.
He likes being, that's his whole thing. I think all day he wants to be as snarky as possible, and sometimes being snarky is fine if you're exposing the truth.
Do you think that's the right thing from the guy who's the chair of the LP?
Oh no, I don't. I'm not trying to condone it whatsoever.
No, I was just wondering. I mean, like that. Like I read that the first time. I was doing some thought experimentation that night, and I was just kind of like, I almost commented on it. I was just like, what a.
We should comment on Nick Sarwark's thing because he's so triggerable.
Yeah.
It'd be good to get attention for
but what a jackass! Like, man, that powder puff, attorney that he is, to joke around about this kind of stuff for him and to be as snarky as he is on this issue. Boy, I'll tell you right now, man. Like, the respect that I have for anybody in terms of their liberty type principles, this guy's he's killed mine, man. He has killed him.
He uses a lot of the snarkiness as a thin protection against attacks from the liberty movement. Like, a lot of the ways he attacks Ron Paul and Tom Woods and so forth is through snarkiness, and that way it's not direct, so you can kind of be like, just being snarky. It's just like, oh, here's this article, this conspiracy theory about how Ron Paul and Rand Paul are working for the Russians.
So when we talk about this whole thing now, with, obviously there's a vacuum created. Turkey right away was on the scene, coming in to say, hey, we're going to come in and basically dismantle the Kurds who are in the area. Mm-hmm. Now, for those of you guys that don't understand geography or who the Kurds are, the Kurds occupy, they're a culture, okay? They're a people, and they occupy a lot of northern Iraq, southern parts of southeastern Turkey, parts of Syria, on the northeastern side of Syria, and then you've got the western Kurds, or I should say Western Iranian type Kurds. So they actually have a pretty sizable geographic area. They've never been recognized as a state, and nobody at the UN, it's like Palestine. They don't want these guys to be a state by themselves. So now the
do the Kurds want a state by themselves?
Oh, hell yes, they do. They've been fighting for autonomy for a very, very long time. And I'll tell you right now, like from having been there,
I mean, like a specific place. Do they want a chunk of those four countries?
I have not. Yeah, they want their own area in the areas that they occupy now.
Okay.
Right. So I understand it. With the powers that be out there, they're probably not going to get it. There are a lot of people who call them terrorists. And I've even seen the narrative changing here in America now to talk about the Kurds as the terrorist, right? Like
the Kurds who have helped us many, many times.
Oh, the Kurds that we've betrayed a whole bunch over the past, I don't know, is 40 years now, at least. So I see this, Banks, and my question to you is, America, a lot of Americans, especially the hawks out there, are freaking out about abandoning the Kurds.
I think they're using it as a pretense, but yes.
Yeah. It's what you're saying is, in other words, it's something that they're going to throw at the wall to see if it sticks, to see if we can't get any traction to stay there. It's not because they love the Kurds.
Absolutely.
Okay.
So what's your question exactly? I interrupted yet again.
So no, it's okay. I think that's a great first understanding and premise to put out there. It's exactly what I think, and to see this changing tide all of a sudden, this narrative trying to be controlled by mainstream pundits and people out there who are hawks and everything, I think it is obviously not only regrettable but reprehensible at the same time. But does the U.S. at this point, do our men and women in uniform need to be there to protect the Kurds?
So there's a moral quandrum that you're putting your finger on there, and there's some similar moral conundrums, like the same framework, that are easier to approach. So, for example, if you ended right now Social Security, there's a lot of people who have paid into it, and there's a system kind of that just existed there. And Ron Paul would talk about how the right thing to do morally is to taper it off, right? Mm. So no new people, but actions have been taken, even though I'm not responsible for taking that action. Let's not stop it right now, because the reality of things is we want to harm the least people. We have principles because principles affect people, and we care about people.
Yeah.
How to apply that to the Kurdish situation, because America is responsible for a lot of what's going on in the world there too. I don't know. It's because it's easier to remove from my personal understanding, because, well, I've never been there. We're far away. It's a foreign policy issue.
Yeah.
And I repeat often, like, don't get into entangling alliances, like the George Washington
Sure.
thing. It's not, I do contemplate, though I'm not sure of myself, maybe the best thing is to cut ties once and for all. Like, if we find a middle solution, it'll just be a compromise to where we actually won't cut ties in the end.
Right.
And it's like, it might be bad, but this is better than nothing. This is farther than the Constitution. And this is the only way how in the future, even if it takes a long time, even if there's a period of horrific circumstances, maybe that's the way to go. And I'll reinforce myself by being like, well, if private people want to find a way to support other private people who are doing virtuous things,
yes,
then that could happen too. And so I kind of support myself with that. I'm like 90% confident in that opinion, but I'm definitely on that side rather than finding some kind of compromise solution that will actually just make things worse down the road. Because down the road also matters. Just because it happens in the future to other people, if you're responsible for making that happen, right, then you're also culpable.
Huh. Yeah. Yeah. I'm much more Aspergery, I guess, and autistic when it comes to this. Like, we're done. We're out of the region, guys. And it's an awful, terrible thing to abandon people, But I'll tell you, from being a Marine, from working with the Kurds were some of the greatest people to work with, and it really breaks my heart. It breaks my heart that they are again going to be subject to slaughter by people who are much more powerful, who have a lot more money, and my heart goes out to them. And for the life of me, though, our men and women have spilled enough blood in that country. I don't think as we if we stay there, the situations improve either, though. And so I'm to that point where it's like, guys, we got to leave. Now, with that being said, I will tell you guys, the amount of training, the amount of equipment, the amount of money that we have given and put into the Kurdish culture and society.
We give money to terrorists?
Yeah, we give tons of money to terrorists. We built ISIS and then destroyed ISIS. For what reason, it's still unclear, but obviously have an idea. I like I said, I'm torn on this, but I'm not. When it comes down to brass tacks, it is get our guys out of there, get everybody home, and I'm talking everybody. I'm not just saying, the soldiers, Marines, sailors, and airmen. I want the spooks and the spies and the gray men and every bureaucrat and diplomat gone. You are done. And not really for most of the damn world, hey, let's go. We don't have the money to support you here. We don't have the infrastructure anymore, the money to support that infrastructure. We can't do this anymore. We need to focus on something, that's a little closer to home, and really probably start looking at the infestation that's in D.C. to begin with. I thought it was interesting because there have been talks, this is coming out about 13 minutes ago, that the Treasury Secretary, Steven Mnuchin, he announced that Trump is going to sign an executive order, which you know what I think of executive orders, that will be, quote-unquote, very significant, and these will be primary and secondary sanctions on Turkey amid the onslaught in northeast Syria. So
you see
more war, more acts of war, because let's face it, sanctions are war, right?
Sure.
And here's the other thing is, unilaterally, again, it's the president of the United States, and we've got this so backwards. The president of the United States was never given the power of executive order in the first place. Look it up. There's no executive order, and so there is no constitutional amendment that gives him the power of executive order. He cannot go to war or create war-type actions because it's not his power. It's the Congress's power. We've said this a million times. And really, this power rests with the Senate. Sanctions belong with the Senate. This whole thing is so turned up on its head. But if there's going to be something done to help the Kurds, I'm not, I don't think I'm opposed to if the Senate wants to go out there and say, hey, Turkey, pull back, stop attacking these people. If you don't, we're going to start leveling sanctions against you. Let's talk peace.
I think that would be better. I would still prefer a private solution, but I understand how far but that would be better to be in line with the Constitution first thing. So that's interesting. I hope, I just don't want anybody to be killed, right? And my last resolve that I can wrap myself in and kind of sleep well at night is that if anybody's being killed, if the Turkish government just slaughters a bunch of Kurds, it's the freaking Turkish government who is guilty. That is the person who is pulling triggers or making other people pull triggers. Those other people are guilty too. And it's not we can think, and we have no power. We can think about what would mitigate death as much as humanly possible. But even if we fail at that, we are not the ones who are guilty of doing that.
Yeah. It looks like a lot of those troops are getting relocated. You know where they're headed? Saudi Arabia.
Wonderful.
Yeah. Along with thousands of other soldiers. Crazy.
Well, there was
you gotta watch all the hands, man. You gotta watch everything that's going on. Just because we're leaving one place doesn't mean we're building up in another.
Yeah, there was an Iranian tanker that was destroyed just yesterday, I guess.
Yeah.
And I wonder if something happens there.
I'm just to the point where I see this, and now I expect it's the State Department. I expect it's maybe parts of the gray area of the military industrial complex, NSA, like all the alphabet soup that's out there. They are now suspect, and that is a weird thing coming from a guy that used to be a neocon, man, a guy that was wrapped in the flag for patriotism. Star Spangled Banner used to bring tears to my eyes, and now all I can do is look at this cancerous, rotten government from the very inside, and it is, God, the decay and the fall of what is going to happen with these guys, man. I sit back and I think about this kind of stuff all the time, but I'll tell you, we are acting. I mean, when you remember, maybe you don't remember. Do you remember the fall of Russia, like in the late 80s? You're probably a little young,
bit.
Right?
I mean, yeah, I was like 4, but
right. I mean, but and I think Ron Paul has talked about this quite a bit recently as well. But we are acting a lot like that. Our military is overextended. We're in terrible parts of the world. We've been there for way too long. We're lashing out like non-rational actors these days to try to prolong and create, I guess, more longevity here for the United States.
That's kind of what empires do, man.
Yeah, and the thing is, you know what else empires do?
Die.
They die. And this one is no damn different. At some point, this empire is going to die.
Well, they're all different, so I do think there are circumstances that make that make things different.
But
and
empires
I think that
die.
The one that we kind of illustrated earlier was just how much of the spirit of freedom is alive in the United States compared to, the empire of China.
Yeah. No, but the thing is
that will have mitigating circumstances.
Rome. You look back to Alexander the Great, you look to Rome, you look to, the UK and now America, like there's a time and the expiration period is coming. Like this has got to happen. And also, I was actually thinking last night again in some thought experiments down there. If the government was private, right? If let's just say the government was a private entity.
I mean, they're okay. Go ahead. I'm not sure where you're going.
Let's say you drug the government before Congress, right, to testify on behalf or against itself for things.
Okay.
Do you believe that the U.S. government would try to use antitrust against itself? I'm not saying like in the same case. This thing's too big. You guys, you got to break this thing up. You guys, listen. When we started this whole thing, we were in our garage, right? We had 3 million people. We were dispersed over 13 colonies, which were mostly rural at the time. And look, we've grown from 3 million people into 330 million people. We got to break this thing up. This thing's too big. You got to have competition. This thing has failed.
That's a bunch of wishful thinking. It would go against a natural occurrence, which is the natural course of things is for government to grow and liberty to yield. So I think that's pretty close to a natural truth. And usually the truth wins out if you push it enough.
Sure.
So I don't think that would happen. No.
Well, I think it's going to happen.
I don't think the government
antitrust
the government would be like, yeah, we're a monopoly. We got to break this up.
No,
it's just too much.
I'm just saying if they were looking at things blindly, I guess if you drug an entity before Congress and didn't name what it was and told them how big they were and what they were into and all this kind of thing, I think the Congress would fall for it and just say, yeah, no, this is an antitrust suit and you guys are obviously too big, so we're going to break you up one way or another. But thanks. We're at hour 30. Is there anything else you want to close up with here today?
No, I think we can do that another time. Maybe right after this. But no, it's been fun. I think that it was an important subject. The more I think it's important, like the truth is important. And while we criticize the government all the time, I don't want us ever to forget that private entities do evil things too. And the free market liberty solution would not make a perfect world. There'll still be evil things. We just think it would be better if all the power wasn't centralized into one entity, because when that happens, whether it's President Trump or President Xi, bad things happen.
Yeah, absolutely.
They ban bears who just like honey. Come on, man.
Oh, them and Alabama have a lot in common. No wrestling bears and no bears with honey. Anyway, if you got anything to bring to our attention, you can send it to info@rebellionpod.com. We will probably post it on our Facebook or talk about it here on the show. 5-star reviews help us climb in the algorithm. So if you've enjoyed this, go out on whatever platform you're listening to, leave us a review. I know we need to find how to read the reviews on a couple of the other ones like Podbean and a few others, because I've gotten messages that...
We've read a few of the Podbean ones. I've got the app on my phone.
I need to find the other ones out there. And
Are there reviews on Stitcher?
Apparently there are. And
that
so
I don't know where to see them.
I am not familiar with it. So if you know how to do that, maybe clue us in. Or copy and paste it, send it to info@rebellionpod.com. And if you found value in the show, we could definitely use your support. We're trying to grow. You can go to patreon.com/rebellionpod. You got a couple nickels you want to rub together, or $1 million. Either way, we're good with either one of those type of donations. Outside of that, this has been The Rebellion, your place for peace, liberty, and free markets.
We love you. We need you.
Peace.
Don't hurt people and don't take their stuff.